Okay. So as you heard, that was just kind of an industrial style track I put together earlier this week. And the Foundry is not just for industrial. In fact, industrial is just kind of one of the small sides of what the Foundry can actually do once you dive in. The Foundry was created by Sonic Smiths, and that is a group of sound designers and composers, and these are guys who are in the industry doing real work all the time. So they know the sounds, they know the workflow that is needed, they know that there's fast deadlines that come up on people in this industry. And these guys have credits from everything from The Dark Knight to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So the guys who created this really know what they're doing when it comes to making these types of sounds. As you look on the screen here, this is the main page of the Foundry. And you can notice that there are 4 separate tabs here, and each one of those represents the 4 sound slots. So you can blend between 4 different sounds in the Foundry and add any number of compression, effects, filters, grainers, sequencers. There's LFOs, multiple step sequencers in here. And we'll get into some of that in a minute, but first I want to show you kind of the heart and the soul of the Foundry, which is the randomize page. So I'm going to select, grab a different instrument here, and then we're going to go to the randomize page. And in the top left-hand corner here, you can see that this is your parent groups. This is the main parent group. Are you looking for pitched effects or are you looking for non-pitched effects? So you can select one or both of them if you want it to randomly give you a generation of either or. You can have both happening at the same time because you have those 4 sound slots. So it could be, if you have both of them selected, you could get a couple of sounds that are generated that are non-tonal along with a tonal element as well. But for the time being, we're just going to go with a pitched element. And then you have an option below that to select between a bed or a pad, an effects hit, and if you have non-pitch selected, you also have the option for a rhythmic sound selection, so if you're looking for more drums and percussion type elements. And then texture. Texture is very similar to a bed or a pad, but you have more morphing elements, things that are coming in and out. It's just a little bit more, I'd say more of a complicated sound than a bed or a drone that you would get with the pads. So I'm going to go ahead and select pitched, bed or pad, and I'm going to keep texture selected as well. And then we're going to look for something that is bright, mysterious, let's say breathy. Organic is good, distorted, and let's go ahead and put metallic in there as well. So I'm going to hit the randomize button, and what that's going to do is it's going to generate a sound based on my criteria that I put in here, and we're just going to see what we come up with here. So we already have kind of a really cool sound generated from that. But say that's not quite what you're looking for. I'm just going to go ahead and generate a new sound here. Hit randomize again. And let's just keep clicking through a couple times here and see what we can come up with. And that's kind of cool right there. I like that one. And if you happen to select another one and you decide, you know what, I like that last one, it does save the randomizations that it comes up with. And so you can use the back arrow here, and we'll go back to that one I liked. Now let's go back to the performance page for a minute, and you can see now that I have 4 new sounds loaded in here, and these are the sounds that it loaded in, and it also even applied some effects to it. And it's not just, when I say that it's a random generator, you know, it's not, like I said, it's not something that you just have no idea what it's going to come up with. I selected a certain type of sound that I was looking for, and it really created a musical, useful sound out of it. You're not going to get a lot of stuff where you're like, I would never use that, because it really is just an intuitive machine when it comes to selecting the sound that you're looking for. So you can see on a couple of these, I have compression selected on this first sound. There's a filter and impulse response, what we call body on here, and it creates just its own timbre. And I'll show you that in a little bit how that works. And then now, if you want to just hear one of the sounds, you can use the morph pad over here on the right side of the screen. And the morph pad allows you to seamlessly blend between your 4 tones that you have selected. So if I move up to the top left-hand corner, I'm just hearing that first tone. I can move over to the right, and that's my second tone. That's one's a little bit harder to hear. It's more of a really low, rumbly type of texture. And then my 4th tone is that one. And there's my third tone. Say I wanted something different in only one of these. I can go ahead and randomly generate a new sound by locking down, let's say I'm going to lock down 1, 2, and 3, and I just want a new sound for number 4. Well, at the bottom right-hand corner, this is the same thing as the randomize button that I showed you earlier. That's going to, we've got a little dice icon here, and that's going to generate a new sound, but just for my 4th sound slot. So I'm just going to move over to the 4th sound slot on my morph pad so we can just hear that. Okay, and now I have what's called breathy organ selected, and this also has a low-pass filter automatically put on it, which I like. So let's hear the sound all together again. Now, one more thing about this morph pad, which I want to show you, which is really, really cool. I can record any sort of motion that I want with the morph pad. So if I wanted to record something that was blending and moving in between the sounds like this, go ahead and hit the record button. And now I'm going to hit play. And now that movement that I just had will continue to loop on itself. And I can also tempo sync that to my host tempo by hitting the sync button, or have it trigger by hitting on trigger here. It'll trigger once I begin to play my first note. So that's pretty cool. One more quick thing on this page. On the bottom hand, there's your master effects, which is delay, reverb, chorus, phaser, and flanger. Any of those can be edited. You can go into the parameters on any of those by shift clicking, and you can see like for the flanger controls, you have your speed amount, your amount, delay, color, and feedback. And all of those master effects, you can edit those as well. You can also generate random effects. So if I just go to my first sound that I have on here, I'm just going to hit this dice next to the effects row and see what other types of sounds I can come up with. And again, this is using the same sample source, but by just running this through, right now it's running through a grainer effects and a body effects. It completely changes the tone of the sound. So really you can just start to see here how many sonic options that you really have, which really between over 18,000 samples in the library, and that's nearly 19 gigabytes of original content. Then you go ahead and add all the morphing of the 4 sound sources, all the effects that you have, the LFOs, the step sequencers, your sound options just almost really become infinite. So it's pretty awesome what you can do just by using a couple of these randomizations in the sound here. So let's look at what we did here. We have the grainer on and the body on, which was randomly selected for this sound. I'm going to select this first tab right here, and each one of these tabs represent basically editing capability for my 4 sounds. This is my first one, second one, third one, and fourth one. Right now I'm basically just listening to my first sound here, so I'm going to hit that first tab, and I'm going to go into the grainer effects. And right now that was selected for me on this sound here. And if I turn it off, this is what it would sound like without that. Turn it back on, and I can go ahead and edit the sample size of the grain effects that's happening. Or again, I have that dice in the bottom right-hand corner. I can randomly change all of the different parameters of this grainer. Okay, let's also look at the other effects that's turned on, which is the body effects. And what this is a collection of impulse responses that we recorded of just random household items. There's even, we did an impulse response of a dog belly. So you can hear now as I select between a few of these impulse responses, how that changes also the tone and the quality of the sound. Right now it's running through button click number 4, but let's run it through a hand clap impulse response. It darkened it up. And how about let's listen to the dog belly. And let's do a couple more. Here's a piece of metal basically. And you can hear how that same tone being run through that impulse response of that metal just gave it this nice, like bright metallic quality to it. It's pretty cool. And again, we have the dice in the bottom right-hand corner, so if you want to just see what it can come up with. This is running through a ceramic mug, and it completely randomized all of the parameter controls of the body impulse response. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and look at a few other type of effects that we have on here. I was telling you about some of the LFOs and the step editors that we have on here. There's 3 LFOs and there's 3 step editors. So that you can combine those together if you want to have some controlling anything from the pitch to the volume to your pan to a filter. And you can have that if you have like an LFO on, which we can do with this sound here. I'm going to go ahead and select LFO number 1, and I'm going to turn it on here. Now nothing's going to happen until I go ahead and assign it to either my pitch, volume, pan, or filter, and then I can also apply it to my 4 different sound sources. I can apply it to just one of them, or I can apply it to all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit the pitch button here. Turn this down a little bit. Or I can apply it to my volume. I'm going to apply it to all the sound sources on here. And I can also apply it to pan if I wanted to. We're going to go ahead and turn that off and move on here. This is a similar idea. You can apply a step sequencer to the pitch, volume, pan, filter. So you could create custom pitch modulations that run throughout I think there's 32 steps here that you can control. There's a template page on here as well if you want to have a custom setup. So if you wanted like a dotted 8th groove on here, there's a couple of custom things that are already applied. And of course, I can go through here and apply any type of curve I want. And that's changing my pitch going down from what I just did there. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go back to the track that I had. I'll just play a little bit of that again so you can hear what it was doing again. So earlier this week, like I said, I just went through and I started doing that entire process you saw there. I just started randomizing a sound until I found something I liked, and I built this kind of industrial, cool, cinematic style track to it. Let me just show you some of the sounds that were on here. 1 second here. Okay. And this is a bass drop that I had on here, and there's also some other cool sound effects that are included with it. And again, all these things I basically created by finding a certain sound I was looking for using the randomized page. And I just generated some of these sounds on here. I also was able to, using the sequencer, which I will show you in a second here, on this particular track, have like a Tom's percussion style track here. And here's the sequencer, which is running that particular sound. If I turn it off, I have it on all 4 sound sources here. So let me turn this off so you can hear what this originally sounded like. So now I basically just have a drum menu. But by turning on my sequencer on my sound sources, I now can create really cool grooves, very musical grooves as well. And you can hear there at the end, there's that little stutter effect. So you can add a stutter to any of your steps that you have in here, which I'll show you in a minute. And again, at the bottom right-hand corner, there's that dice again. So if I want to just completely change this groove here, hit the dice. I'll try again, a different one. And the cool thing is how musical, even when I randomize all of my sequencer on here, I still get a very musical effect from it, a musical result. And you can go in and dive in and change all the parameters yourself. But I really find that hitting these randomizations on these pages, I kind of just start to get cool ideas and inspiration from it and move on from there. I'll go to my next track here, which is another rhythm track. And you can hear there's a little higher ticky type percussion, also using the sequencer on here. And this particular one, you can really hear that the stutter effects that we had on here. So I'm going to add stutter effects to a few more of the steps that we have on here. You can change the speed of the stutter. Okay. My next track here was just my kick and my snare that I had on here. And there's a couple different sound options on here. And this particular track, I mainly utilized, for effects, I have my distortion and my lo-fi on this track. So if I turn my lo-fi and my distortion off, this is more or less the original sound source that I had. But these effects are just so good on here with adding a little distortion, and then the lo-fi effect, which I love. Just get a really great crunch and cool tone to that kick and the snare. I had a couple of drone effects on here. And that's applying a number of the different effects that are on board on here as well. And then these guitars. These guitars were kind of the heart and soul once I found these, and they kind of generated themselves. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I can make something out of this. Just huge, fat sounding, affected guitars. Just really great if you're doing a metal track or an industrial track or something like that. And I had a second one here. Well, actually, I have them both triggered right now. So there's two of them blended on there to just get a fatter sound. That's the first one. And here's my second one. Just something to thicken it up on here. And then I was also using one of the step sequencers here to create this stutter sound. And that's simply using, as I showed you earlier, let me see what I had set on there. I'm using some of the LFOs on there, and it's just, it's doing an LFO with the volume on each of my four tones on that particular sound. Well, that's about it. The Foundry is $2.99. It's available at Big Fish Audio, and I thank you guys for watching.